I guess I don't know.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education. This is a regular meeting of September 16th, 2019. And our first order of business, I'd ask you to all please rise and we'll pledge allegiance to this flag. Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. Ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Here.
Dr. Alati?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones? Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Mr. McLean?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside of the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available here in the meeting room, and the agenda was posted electronically on the Friday before the meeting on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. There's actually, I think, maybe only one more agenda here in the front if somebody needs that. This meeting will be taped. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. on Comcast Public Access Channel and on FiOS Channel 38. A video of the meeting can also be viewed on our website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of the meeting can make that request in writing to the board's secretary. So, members of the board, in your packets were the minutes from our regular meeting of August 26th, and no executive session. Were there any changes, comments to be made to those minutes? I had made one to Mr. Kelly for myself, abstaining on finance number 4. And so that will be changed and ask the secretary then to enter them into the record and post them. I'm going to switch up a little bit the order of the agenda. I'm going to say a few words in lieu of a president's report in the beginning. So I just, because this is, it's a little different type of meeting, but it is a regular business meeting for us, so I wanted to be able to welcome you all. I know a little bit now what Father Mike feels like. There's not a lot of people sitting up front here in the pews, but appreciate you all coming out tonight, and hopefully we have some information that you'll find interesting. The goal of having this meeting was that you are able to learn what we can give you regarding a special election that will be coming up on September 24th. It's a bond referendum for schools improvement programs. And don't confuse that with the November election, which I'll talk about just in a second. So again, this is a regular meeting. We'll conduct it as we do our regular meetings. There'll be a special presentation this evening, which is conducted by our superintendent, Mr. Hurley, on this upcoming school bond referendum. And during the meeting then, there'll be 2 periods of public comment. So the way we're structuring it is when we're done with the presentation, There'll be the first period of public comment, and that will be for anybody wishing to make comment or ask questions. And it's not really a question-answer period, but we try to answer as many questions as we can. We ask comments be limited to 3 minutes. We'll keep loose track of that, and if somebody's running over, we'll give you a little hint that we're past 3 minutes. And then also at that time, any topic which is on the agenda can be addressed. Later in the meeting, after we go through all the regular business, we'll come back to a period of public comment at which anything can be asked. This evening, one important activity, I guess, or one important thing that we need to do is to welcome Bridget Boylan at the end of the table here, who's our new student representative for the upcoming year. We're thrilled that you're here with us, and I talked a little bit through with you what the normal procedures are. We're not normally sitting up on a stage, but we're down in the more cozy cafeteria meeting room. But soon I'll call on you to give you a report, and we'll take it from there, okay? I would like to also, since we do have some folks that maybe have not experienced board meetings in the past, I'd like to take the opportunity just to introduce the board. My name's Kevin McLean. I'm the board president, but I'm one of the 9 elected trustees. I'll start on the right, and at the end of the table is Mrs. Diane Jones, and Diane is the chair of our Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Then next to her is Eddie Rowland, Mr. Eddie Rowland, who is our legislative liaison. Next to Eddie is Dr. Greg Racine, who's the chair of our Finance and Budget Committee. Next to Dr. Racine is Mrs. Shelley Ahmed, who's the chair of our Personnel Committee. Next to, and then we'll skip, well, we've got our business administrator, I'm sorry, and our superintendent, but the next board member to my left is Mr. Dennis Mazzone, who's our vice president, and he is the chair of our Building and Grounds. And then next to him is Mrs. Sally Librera. And then, oh my God, next. Okay, Mr. Dennis Healy, who's the chair of our Policy Committee. And at the end, Dr. Sergio Alati, who is the chair of our Strategic Planning and Communications Committee. So it's a 9-person board, and the way it works is every year 3 seats come up for election. So there are 3 seats coming up this year for election. They're not voted on during the September 24th vote that you'll be making, hopefully all making on the referendum, but they'll come up with the November election. And there's 3 seats open. Of the people at the table, Mr. Mazzone is running again for the board, and he, with Mr. Mazzone running for the 3 board seats, will be Mr. Chris Conti, Mr. James Spayberry, and Mr. Frank Wilson. So you'll see those names at the bottom of the general election ballot in November, and we ask you to vote then. To the board members, I'll finish my comments simply by saying that at the last meeting, I had asked if we could try to have our self-evaluations done by this meeting. I got some people come to me and say, you know, it was really putting a little bit of a bind on people time-wise. So if we can try to do that by the October meeting, it will be helpful so that we can, during November and December, hopefully make some headway on one of our goals, which involves that self-evaluation outcome. I don't know if there's any board member that has a question at this point. Okay. So then we will move on to the report of our new student representative. Bridget?
Good evening, board members and Rutherford residents. I'm Bridget Boylan, the 2019 to 2020 student representative on the Board of Education. I'm honored to be here tonight as the voice of the students and inform the Board of Education on the happenings of the high school throughout this academic year. I look forward to what this year has to offer to the students of Rutherford High School as well as other schools in the district, and hope for a successful year for everyone. The year has begun with a great start, athletically, culturally, and academically for Rutherford schools. Many Rutherford residents are aware of the first 2 wins for the varsity football team in the last 2 weekends, giving the entire town hope of the 3rd state championship. However, many other sports have been doing extremely well. The cross-country team, both boys and girls soccer, tennis, and volleyball, have a winning record and have attracted many students to their events. Although athletics is important, I believe the true significance they have in the Rutherford community is bringing students together outside of the four walls of the high school in the hours of 8 to 3. Especially at football games and more recently at soccer and volleyball games, students from every grade and social groups have come together to observe and cheer on their fellow students. At this past weekend's football game, hundreds of kids packed into a tiny section on the bleachers and screamed for 3 hours, hoping to inspire the players on the field. What was witnessed Friday night encapsulates what Rutherford High School culture entails and what I hope and believe will follow us throughout the year. Now that classes have begun and everyone has gotten back into the routine of school, clubs and other extracurriculars are beginning to start their year welcoming new students. Every morning, the students on the RTV morning announcements spit out the list of clubs and their meeting times for all new students, especially freshmen, and all are encouraged to attend. The countless number of clubs offered at Rutherford and the possibility of starting your own ensures that there are a place and a way for every student to become involved at the high school. Furthermore, the administrators of the high school are encouraging students to take care of their health, whether it be through yoga, meditation, or self-defense, which are great after-school activities that also work off detentions. We're having a conversation with our school psychologist, Mr. Doran. Every student must take care of their mental and physical health, which is why these activities have been created as an option. On Friday, we also had our fall pep rally, where every student in the school gathers in the gym to kick off the year in a spirited way. This event shows the freshmen as well as new students the spirit that lines the halls of Rutherford schools and the type of community that is established here. This weekend, we have 2 more events that accomplish the very same goal: the homecoming dance and the parade. Friday, students dress up and enjoy a night in the cafeteria to socialize with each other while there is music and dancing. Saturday is one of my favorite days of the high school, the homecoming parade, where students walk with the town of Rutherford, supporting their class, and then attend a football game where they support our team. There's an extreme sense of community and belongingness that surrounds that day and is encouraged that all students attend. This year, the Student Council is persuading more students to come out and join the festivities by beginning Spirit Week, the week in which the 4 classes compete in activities, fundraisers, and costume contests to prove who is the best class. Each person that attends the homecoming parade will add points to their class, giving them a head start for that week in March. We hope that it will motivate more students to come to the parade and see what an enjoyable day it is. The experience of Rutherford High School is remembered by alumni, some of whom are attending tours at the Rutherford High School in the coming weekends. The National Honor Society students are leading tours to the classes of 59, 69, 79, and 99 to show them how the high school has changed since they were Bulldogs. Moreover, the freshmen have seemed to make a smooth transition into the high school, and I've had far less 14-year-olds bumping into me in the hallway asking for directions. They are adjusting well, have gotten used to the dynamics of the school and the way everything functions. Academically, classes seem to be running very smoothly for all grades and all subjects. Most teachers have already begun their curriculum, and students are falling back into the school routine and the homework and studying that accompanies their classes. Many teachers, especially in honors and AP classes, have begun using more online programs, such as Albert and AP Classroom, that provide more practice to students who are struggling in certain subjects. These tools help teachers to diagnose where students are and at what pace they are learning. Furthermore, AP registration is beginning early this year in order to ensure that every student is registered and able to take the tests in May. In the coming months, sophomores and juniors will be taking the pre-ACT and PSAT, respectively, which will begin to prepare them for their future after leaving Rutherford High. Each class of students has met with Mr. Moreno, Mr. DeBarry, and the guidance counselors about what is in store for the year, and the senior class has met with Dr. Hopkins, the director of guidance, about college applications. Students are being properly prepared for what they need to accomplish during this academic year and are being provided with access to plenty of tools that will help them in their future. I am so honored for the opportunity to be here tonight and speak in front of everyone about the state of the high school and its student body. I'm extremely excited for the year to come, and I'm certain that it's going to be a great year for all the students and faculty at Rutherford schools. I would like to thank everyone for their time, the Board of Education for having me here. I hope everyone has a great night and a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I've had the privilege of listening to multiple students over the years sit in your seat, and I'm always impressed with how they prepare thoughtful comments, how they're poised in delivering them, and just as impressed with the range of activities that are going on with our students. So we appreciate you bringing that to us. And your insights are important to us as we consider things throughout the year. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, in a normal meeting, after you give your report, frequently the student rep has heavy test schedules to study for, that sort of thing. At least that's what they tell us. This is a little early in the year for us to believe that, But still, what we're going to do is we're shortly going to, the group of trustees will go down to the seats for the presentation at that time. Or after the presentation, if you want to leave, that's fine. We appreciate it. Are there any questions for our new student representative? Any comments? No. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. So then we will now go to the special presentation by Superintendent Hurley of the One Rutherford Facilities Referendum presentation. I should mention, because I'm someone that was affected by this, I have a work schedule that will sometimes pull me out of town unexpectedly, and I found out that I need to be out of town next week on the day of the referendum election. I won't say I was, my wife was able to deliver to the Bergen County Board of Elections my request for an absentee ballot on Friday, and I'm going to have the absentee ballot and be able to vote. So if there's anybody that is finding themselves having to be out of town the day of the vote, there's still time to put that application in up in Hackensack and get your absentee ballot. I believe you can pick it up right there if you're willing to wait while they process it. So with that, then we'll ask the board members to please go down into the front row, and we'll have Superintendent Hurley give his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight to find out a little more about the OneRutherford.com facilities plan that will be on the ballot, as Mr. McLean said, next week. Normally in my report, I go over some other items. Tonight, because of the special presentation, I'll save some of those comments till we get to the point in the agenda where they're warranted, but I did want to take a moment to mention that we had a really, really strong opening of schools for our students and our faculty and staff, and we're well on our way to hopefully a successful school year. So before I get started, if I'm hoping that you've all been to the website, onerutherford.com. Tonight's presentation is going to go over some key parts of the plan, and a flyer that was mailed to every home in the borough went over the key parts of the plan. Other handouts that have been given out at the street fair and throughout back-to-school nights and other areas around the community also give you some key components, but the real complete details can be found at that website. So I encourage you to visit it. As you are aware, last year we had a referendum that was defeated. And we did hear and listen, and the board listened to the community. We found in that vote that there seemed to be overwhelming support for our schools. There was seemingly a pretty real understanding of our needs for space. There was interest in the community in maintaining the high school pool. There was an interest in the community of not adding a kitchen and a new cafeteria. And there was the feeling among some of the voters, obviously, that the cost was too high. We're calling this One Rutherford proposal because what we attempted to do, and I'm going to be saying we, but when I'm saying we, I'm talking about the board, I'm talking about myself and Mr. Kelly, the administrators, the members of the community that are part of our facilities planning committee, try to take into account all of the perspectives and try to bring together the concepts and the wishes and the desire of the community that we listen to. So why do we need a referendum? Well, enrollment's up. The demographic report says over 225 students going back 5 years and projecting ahead 5 years. We also need new and renovated STEM and science labs, gym spaces. We need more classrooms because of that enrollment increase, and there's going to be other reasons, which I'm going to get to in a few slides. I want to mention, though, that enrollment projections, is looking at just a little bit under 2,600 students this school year. We're already at 2,600 students in district. These are projections, and so far, the projections are actually exceeding the projections, the reality, I'm sorry to say, not projections, are exceeding the projections. Our kindergarten class this year is the highest we've ever had, at 209 students. I believe last year we were at, Dr. Valesco was here, 185 or 186, and we've had most years between 180 and 190. Keep in mind that we always get a big bump of students in first and second grade because families move in after they may have started school in another district, or maybe they decided not to put their child in kindergarten since it's not mandatory. We have 8 classes this year with over 200 students. I've been here a long, long time. I think we would have one maybe in the entire district of 200, and that's only in recent years. We used to average about 160 to 170, so our enrollment is up. We also looked at this plan, and we looked to reduce the scope of work from the last plan, and that was talking about cost. So we found a long-term solution for the pool to maintain the pool, and a long-term of a 5-year plan for the pool. We reduced the price tag by $9 million or so in terms of real dollars. When we initially made the cuts, it was about $12 million, but things go up, prices go up. So every year you wait, you pay a little more for a little less. So we took $12 million off the original plan, but when we went out to re-estimate things, it was about $9 million less. We put an even stronger emphasis on maintaining our buildings, and I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, okay? I mean, a lot of what's in this plan is taking care of major maintenance issues, and I'll talk a little more about that in a few moments. And we're focusing on the core problems without major changes to non-instructional areas. So, the things like the kitchen and the cafeteria and the back field, which are debatable whether they're instructional or not. We felt they were, but we really are focusing, everything in this plan is focusing on improving and increasing classrooms and instructional areas. So we tried to balance the numerous interests to reflect the one Rutherford that we all love. Obviously, number one, the students who are educated here, the residents who benefit from a community with strong schools, because I think anyone would agree that people move in, stay in, come to towns with strong schools. The taxpayers who are continuously investing in the future, because that's what you're doing when money is going to support the schools or any other municipal service. You are investing in the borough in the future, and the businesses that thrive here in town. So talking a little bit about each of the buildings. At the high school, we're looking to renovate 4 substandard science labs that are approaching 50 years old. People who joined us on a tour on Saturday saw that the labs have stationary tables anchored to the ground with electric running through them. They can't be moved. There's no place to put technology, which now really does drive the science program. You can't work in the group work and the collaborative learning that dominates education today. There's things that we don't need anymore in the science lab to meet the next generation science standards, and there's things that we need that we just can't get in the classroom. Keep in mind that when those labs were renovated to be state-of-the-art and they opened up in 1977, 78, the students who walked in there and said, wow, these are really neat modern labs, are now between 64 and 68 years old and are probably retiring from work. The inefficient Mortimer Avenue wing. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you haven't driven down Mortimer Avenue. But if you go out and look at the whole wing, which impacts about 40 classrooms, we're not just talking about aesthetics and appearance, we're talking about functionality. We bleed energy in and out of those windows that are single pane. They are no longer, that whole section is a single pane construction that is no longer up to code. You can't build a building like that anymore. The windows cannot be replaced because they don't make them, and you'd have to replace the entire segment. They don't make that. So we have plexiglass and actually pieces of aluminum with windows, and again, people on the tour saw this. Windows shatter when they're shut too hard. We have windows shattered when the wind blows too hard. We then can't replace the windows. The univents that circulate air in the building, and it's not a climate control, we have to have air conditioners in the rooms, window-type air conditioners. But the univents that take care of the airflow, again, are no longer up to code because they're 60 years old. There's no shut-off valves for water or steam that may break. We had a leak in one of them last year in the high school, and we had to have the principal and the custodian with vacuuming up water until we get down and shut the main off for the entire building because it doesn't have the proper shut-off valves at each unit. It's inefficient. It wastes money with energy. It's not safe with the glass breaking. And there is the aesthetic factor as well. That's not the driving force. But in an outstanding school system, the high school should be the jewel. When people see it and they want to come to town, they should say, wow, look at that high school. I'll leave the opinion of the facade up to you for your judgment. At Union School, we'll build a gym that's the right size for a middle school. Really, the gym that we're going to build at Union School would be the right size for an elementary school because the gym at Union is about 40% the size of the gym at Washington and Lincoln. It is not capable of putting the number of kids that are in a phys ed class anywhere from 50 to 60. It is not the recreation usually for first and second graders. We can't have an adequate teaching center. We can't have an adequate physical education, health, and wellness center. We can't have a co-curricular program for our 7th and 8th grade graders in that gym. And the community can't use it to the extent it could as a recreation facility because of the size of the gym. I'm going to skip the second one and come back to it. The wood columns in the front that you see a picture of need to be restored and or replaced. We have warped floors from water damage that have been in the building that have been seeping up for years. We tried to find out where the water was coming from with engineers from the New Jersey State Department, from our architect, from private companies, and we never been able to figure out where the water is coming from. We think it might be boiling springs that the land was built on or something like that. But we did find out how to solve it by putting a vapor seal on the floors, ripping them up, putting down this seal, and then putting new floors in. We did a couple of classrooms about 6 years ago, and we have not had any problems. The problem is there are 10 classrooms, there's the auditorium stage, and there's the gym floor that all have warped hills. In some cases, the floorboards are given out. We've had to piecemeal it together to replace with that vapor seal with the new floors, 11 classrooms. That's a very costly project. Again, it's not aesthetics, it's functionality. The floorboards are actually rotting out. We can fix the problem, we just need to be able to fund it. At Pierpont School, again, a gym that's the right size. In Lincoln School and Washington School, where there are about 350 students, and their first, second, and third graders, the gym is 2 times the size of Pierpont, where there are 600 fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. Just like I said at Union School, the gym will do all those things. Better teaching station, better co-curricular use, better community use. But there's another thing that can't happen in Pierpont that can happen in every other school, and that is having a school-wide assembly, a school-wide program. There's no space in the building big enough. They have a band with over 100 students. They have a choir with over 100 students. They don't have a stage to put on a concert. They don't have a place for parents to come and see them perform. So, like the gym at Washington and Lincoln, the gym here would also build a stage similar to the size of this stage, which would allow their band, their choir, their play to take place. Union School will not build a stage because their auditorium can hold their entire school population. The old gym would be replaced with a 2-story, 11-classroom wing. It is essential that we add classrooms. Right now, every one of our classes in district is being used. Every one of our classrooms is at or above what we would consider a good number of students. Most of our classrooms are at 25, 26, 27 students. The 11 classrooms would allow us to add 2 additional grade 4, grade 5, grade 6 classes, which would make class sizes more manageable and instruction better. It would also allow us to continue keeping our special education population that is in district and that we've brought back to district here, which is the best thing to do under the law, the least restrictive environment. Keeping special ed students in district where they're part of their community, where they benefit from all the education that all of our students get, is what's the right thing to do and what the law asks us to do. We don't have room for some of the students who are currently here when they move up in grade levels, and we don't have room to bring and keep more students back. And I'll repeat, it is the right thing to do for the students. It is also the right thing to do, we're talking about money, for the budget. Because every special ed student that goes out of district is costing between $80,000 and $120,000 a year for each year of their education. And then the multi-purpose room, which has a tiny stage. They do put their play on there, but they can't do much else, and also serves as a lunchroom, will be renovated, remove that little stage, which would make their cafeteria lunchroom actually big enough to accommodate their students, which it really isn't now in multiple lunches, and also provide it to be ADA, up to ADA standards, because it isn't right now with access to bathrooms and stairs, and also would connect to air conditioning in the new wing so that the lunchroom would be air conditioned. That multi-purpose room gets extremely hot. Lincoln School, when the 2005 edition was added, it was set up where we could add 2 classrooms on the second level. We're going to add those classes again because we have no room. We are maxed out in Lincoln, in Washington, in the kindergarten center. Every classroom being used to capacity. To put 2 classes at the K to 3 level allows us to deal with the growing population there. Right now, we're at a spot where we really can't fit more kindergarten kids, and we don't have another place to send them. So we're going to be adding, there's no room to add at Sylvan, there's no room to add at Washington. These 2 classrooms will help our growing population be in better sized classes and also allow room for those special programs I spoke about. Before I get to the kindergarten center, district-wide, because we're not adding classrooms at the kindergarten center, we're looking at adding 11 classes at Pierpont, 2 at Lincoln. I know, I skipped something, right? I said I was going to go back to that slide. I meant I was going to go back to it much later, okay? Let me go back to Union School. The existing gym will get turned into 3 learning labs. We're calling them learning labs. They're really going to be science labs. Right now, we have a middle school that does not have a science lab. We have taken the library, and if you're familiar with Union's library, it's rather small, and we have one side of it using Z-Space, which is an interactive 3D science tool that allows students to do biology, engineering, all the STEM courses. That's on one half of the library because we don't have a classroom for it, because all the other classrooms are in use. And the other half of the library is being used as a makerspace, which allows kids to create and learn some engineering practices, and is a combination of really STEAM, the science, technology, math, but also the arts. We teach our very successful robotics class in a social studies room with no place to store equipment. The kids who take history in that class sit in a horseshoe around the floor that is filled with all the material that should be in a science or STEM lab for the robotics. In the old gym, we would build 3 science learning labs that would accommodate STEM, would accommodate robotics, would accommodate makerspace, would accommodate Z-space. We would have those 3 labs there. And then the classrooms that are currently being used as a split would go back to being a classroom that we need, and the library could go back to being a library media center and not a library media center a couple of periods a day and a science lab the rest of the day. So when we add it all up, we're adding 16 classrooms and 2 gyms. And of the 16 classrooms, 3 are going to be new science STEM labs, and 4 classrooms that are in the old, inventory of classes will be renovated to be in the contemporary standards of what a science lab should be. At the kindergarten center, as you are aware, if you've been to the website, by state law, every classroom has to have a bathroom in it for kindergarten students. We have 3 classrooms that do not. We get a waiver from the State Department of Education to run kindergarten. We have to hire a teacher assistant to walk the students across the hall, through another classroom, into the bathroom. The state told us last year that the waiver was not for a lifetime. They denied us the waiver, which would have meant we could not run full-day kindergarten. We appealed to the state, saying to them we have a referendum plan, and could they give us the benefit of another year to see what happens with the plan, and they did that. So adding the 3 bathrooms is absolutely essential to the continuation of full-day kindergarten in the kindergarten center. The nurse's office does not have a restroom. We would add one there. Keep in mind that 5-year-old children who go to the nurse because they are sick, and often that sickness involves something with stomach issues, have to leave the nurse's office, go into what's a gang toilet is called, which means is a hallway bathroom with a couple of stalls. Other children have to be told not to come into the bathroom because there's a sick child in the hallway bathroom. And I can guarantee you that on the kindergarten level, those sorts of things happen, if not daily, very, very, very often. Install air conditioning for the heavily used multi-purpose room. If you've been in Sylvan School, again, if you took the tour, it's a very small multi-purpose room. It serves as a gym, it serves as a cafeteria, it serves as an assembly place, sometimes with as many as 200 students, other times with half the population for lunch, maybe 100 students, and it's not air conditioned. And an elevator for all building accessibility. What you see Ms. Coy, who's a supervisor, in with her custodian, Nancy Brundage, behind her, is what we've done to what we purchased a few years ago in order to open the building. It's the only building without an elevator, and if a student or an adult has to go up and down the stairs, this is a kind of a tank sort of an apparatus that the wheelchair goes on it, gets strapped in, and a person has to operate it. That gets tipped way back, okay? That really doesn't do it justice, but you can see it on the video, you can see it on the website. It takes probably 5 to 6 minutes to navigate the 2 flights of stairs that go up in the building. The hallway stairs, well, not as wide as that. That's down by the multipurpose room. Has to get shut down so nobody else can go up the building. We are thankful that we haven't had to use it for students, if we ever have to. Again, I don't know if anybody would like their 5-year-old to go through that several times a day. And again, if you took the tour or if you've been in Sylvan, you can't get anywhere in that building without going up and down stairs. We are not ADA compliant, and we should be. We can't put staff in that building. We have staff in a wheelchair. They can't go to that building. We have parents, grandparents, who would have a hard time navigating the building. I look at this as an investment. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We went with a smaller scope of work to bring the price tag down a bit. We tried to focus on the improvements to keep Rutherford's strengths as a desirable community with competitive housing market and an outstanding school district. Those things go together. They go together. If you're someone who moved here with children, ask yourself why, and I'm sure the schools had something to do with it, if not everything to do with it. The referendum would ask for approval to borrow up to $45.3 million, and again, I rounded these numbers off. The state aid would cover a little over $9 million of that, and the local share would be about $36.3 million. State funding for qualified projects only go through a bond referendum. That's when you get the state funding. So the pie chart shows what the state would be giving us, your tax dollars that go to Trenton would actually, you'll see them come back to you in Rutherford to help with this investment in our schools to the tune of over $9 million. The tax impact, there are some checks and balances put into the bond referendum. The district can't spend more than the amount authorized by voters and can't spend any of the bond money on costs not associated with the projects. The $9 million in state aid brings the annual cost on a home with an assessed value of $430,270. That is the average assessment from the tax assessor. I want to remind you, is not what you could sell your house for, is what the assessor says your tax is based on. For the average home, that comes out to $336.77 a year, which is about $28 a month. People ask, what about maintenance budgets? What about capital budgets and things of that nature? Well, it's always happening in the district. We put every year, the board allocates about $700,000 to $800,000, some years more, some years a little less, into major improvements. We have a 2% cap on our budget, which means in most years the entire budget can increase by about $750,000. That's all the law allows. A 2% cap when salaries go up 3%, when benefits go up 12 or 14%, when prices of supplies and energy and oil and everything else goes up more than 2% to maintain our programs. But even if we could, now again, $700,000 a year that we can manage to put into capital improvements to fix roofs or to replace a boiler or to put in new carpeting or to, things of that nature. Even if we could fund projects that add up to millions of dollars, which we can't in our budget, 100% of that would come out of the local taxpayer. Through the bond referendum, we're getting up to 40%. And again, there's a calculation the state does. In this case, it's going to be more in the upper 20s, but it's $9 million of money coming back to us. So, that's kind of an overview of the plan, and is the overview of the benefits, and it's also an overview of the cost, right? The consequence, what the tax would be. On our website, you can get a lot more information. You could also look at the frequently asked questions, which go over lots of questions that you may have or you may be thinking of. I do want to add one thing I think it's important to add, because I tried to, in this presentation, on behalf of the board, to show you what the needs are, what the improvements would be, the benefits would be, and also what the costs would be to you as taxpayers. So I gave you the consequences, good, and the cost of voting yes. There's a frequently asked question, what happens if the referendum goes down? I think it's important to be thinking of those consequences as well. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't stand here and say, if the referendum fails, what are we going to do? How are we going to address some of the needs? How are we going to fix certain things? I don't know. But there are two things, and I'm not saying this to any other reason to be factual. We will not be able to have full-day kindergarten. We will become the only town in Bergen County to go back to half-day kindergarten because we cannot run that building again if we're not beginning to address the issue of the bathroom. And we will not be able to keep more special ed students in district, which is the best thing for those that can stay here, and they're also a very positive thing for the budget. And some of the students who are here may have to leave. Now, again, there could be other things, good and bad, that come out of a failed referendum. I'm not going to project all of those. But those two are pretty much for real. And if you look at the frequently asked question, you'll see why they're for real. So I ask you to please consider what you heard tonight. If you haven't read the material that was sent to you, if you haven't looked at the website, please do so. And I ask you please to vote on the 24th. It's important that your voice, the collective voices here, be heard. Okay? So I know there'll be a chance for public comment. Normally, we'll go back up. If the board has any comments or questions of me, they could ask at that time, and then I'll turn the meeting back to the president for the open public comment. Thank you for your time.
Who has mic 2 sitting near them? Mic number 2? You were having trouble with mic number 2?
Testing.
You can't stop Sally. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Hurley, for the presentation. Before I open the floor to the public for comments, are there any members of the board who have a comment or a question for the superintendent regarding the presentation given? I guess I would say, for those that are here, it's important to note the board can't suggest to you which way you should vote. The goal of tonight was to give, again, presentation of information. As Mr. Hurley said, the information in much more granular detail is available at the website, and we encourage you to encourage others to go and learn. Our goal is that as many of our residents as can vote in the referendum, and that they're making an informed vote. So that's what, that obviously the board has supported these improvements because we recognize them as needs for the school, but it also comes with a cost, and we recognize that as well. So I had mentioned earlier that during the periods of public comment, it's not a debate period, but certainly, especially here, since the referendum already exists, we're not discussing whether or not the referendum should be put up to a ballot. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can if there are some questions. So we'll be, and we'll, again, we have a 3-minute rule by policy. We'll try to be as accommodating as we can with that. If somebody feels they have more than 3 minutes worth of comment or questions, when we reach the end of the 3 minutes, maybe we'd ask you to step away, let someone else talk, and then at the end, at the end, if there's more time, we'd have you come back to finish that up. So it is currently, for the record, 8:19 p.m., and I will open the floor to the public for comments or questions. There's a microphone on this side of the room. We would ask you to come to the microphone. Just for the record, please state your name and your address, and then make your comments, please.
My name's Bob Schaefer at 21 Inslee Avenue. Just a question. If someone came up with $45 million, just say they want to pay for this whole project, are you allowed to take it and just let them pay for it?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
I said if somebody came up to you and said they had $45 million, they wanted to give you an endowment to pay for this project, are you by state law allowed to take it and let them fund it?
Yeah, I think we probably could. There's certain mechanisms and certain restrictions, certain accounting procedures, but we'd certainly look into it, yeah.
Okay, well, so my question really comes down to, I'm a lifelong resident of Rutherford, all except 2 years, whatever. I went to St. Mary's Grammar School and high school. And St. Mary's, as you know, probably know, recently, a few years back, renovated the whole church. They renovated the gym. And I don't believe they took any bond issues out. I believe that they did everything with public donations. You see people's names on different things that donated different things or helped fund the project. I know the Alumni Association gave tons of money. We got letters constantly, and they monitored the spending. I mean, I went to St. Mary's. I graduated almost 50 years ago. People I saw on the pages of their alumni letters had given very substantial amounts of money. And it seems like, you know, I support the school system. I believe something has to be done and everything. But it all seems to always be on the homeowners. The people that rent don't pay anything. You could say you could raise the rent. You could only raise the rent so much, and it becomes unaffordable. And as more you raise the taxes in Rutherford, it seems like even though the schools make Rutherford a desirable place to live, the taxes make it undesirable. I have 5 children myself. 2 of them can't afford to live in Rutherford. 3 of them choose not to because of the taxes. And if there is an opportunity to get money from donations, I don't understand why we don't go that route first. I mean, St. Mary's raised a tremendous amount of money. I believe it was like in the tune of $20 million. I mean, you're talking about $45 million. St. Mary's is nothing compared to the rest of the town of Rutherford. And I don't understand why we don't go that route first. And another thing, I mean, I have a timeshare in Aruba. I watched the things decaying around here, and I watched the same thing happening in Aruba. The resort I owned a timeshare in was decaying, and a lot of it was from mismanagement. They decided to fire the company that was running the place and run the place on their own through using experienced people in different fields. They were all elected. One thing they did was they put in a capital improvement fund. I don't know if capital improvement funds are allowed under state law either, but you know, if you charge people $25, $50 a year, over years it comes out to real money. And you could just do the work when you need it instead of waiting. How many years have you been without the bathrooms in the kindergarten? I mean, does this town even have people that could do it if you had the funds to just supply the materials? Do we have personnel on our payroll that could do this work? I mean, the bathroom costs like $20,000. You could have a decent-sized bathroom. I don't understand why we wait years to do it.
So we're at the end of the 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you had, so I mean, I also happen to be a trustee at St. Mary and was involved with that. You know, a capital campaign like that I've never seen for a public schools. I'm not sure that that's allowed by statute. Certainly donations are, and in fact, we fund, the town through the Rutherford Education Foundation funds many, many programs for our schools. Annually, at least $50,000, I think.
Right, the Rutherford Education Foundation funds, and I believe, Dr. Alati, you're a member, I think it was $62,000 or something like that last year?
64,000.
64,000, that was the most ever. Goes into programs. Sometimes it's capital issues, often is curriculum issues. They work very, very hard. They run different fundraisers and drives, and they come up with what is a good amount of money, $64,000. We're talking about $45 million. And I think when you look at private sector versus public, when you look at church-affiliated organizations versus public, there are different rules, there's different regulations, there's also different motivation and willingness of people to contribute. We don't set up the way schools are funded in the state of New Jersey. The law does, and they are funded by the taxpayers. And there are many people who would think, I think, why do I have to donate tons of money because my taxes are also going to that school, whereas a private school or parochial school exists at the generosity of their donors and of their tuition-paying students. We cannot charge people a fee for what it has to be a free and public education. Now, I understand nothing is free, right? The taxpayers are paying. It's like when you go and take a tour of a college and the tuition's $40,000, and they say, yeah, but you get free use of the gym. Well, yeah, for your $40,000 tuition, you're getting free use of the gym. So the system, as Mr. McLean said, is designed the way it is. We accept donations, we get donations, and we're very grateful for them. But we're talking about basically rebuilding a wing of a building, building an 11-story addition to another building. We're talking dollars that, we can never raise. And we're also talking about providing some relief to the taxpayers in terms of the $9 million. That's the donation we're getting. We're getting $9 million from the state of New Jersey to help offset the cost.
And don't get us wrong. If somebody in this room wants to donate a gymnasium to the schools, we'll figure out a way to make that work. Or maybe more likely somebody watching. So we certainly could accept, a large benefactor donating something.
I don't solicit it. That's my point.
Yeah, and
I mean, they go after, you have an alumni association that's 10 times the size of St. Mary's. And you'll never know if you don't ask.
so again, there are regulations as to how monies can flow into the schools.
45 million.
I think we should.
Yeah.
If you take the 45 million, why wouldn't you take the John Smith?
There are donations received.
If again, we'll close it with this, okay? And there's a whole different, like I said, motivation, clientele, reasons why people donate to universities and churches and things like that, and a different mindset when it comes to public schools. That said, over the 10 or 15 years of the REF's existence, I would be hard-pressed to think that we've even hit $2 million over 15 years. So yeah, we solicit donations, we through the REF, and that's what we get. It's a different world. It's a different world.
But thank you for your comments. Any other member of the public wish to make a comment or question? Please approach the mic. And just your name and address, please.
Good evening. David Porter, 176 Fairview. Superintendent Hurley, thank you for your presentation and your description. It helps fill in some of the gaps of what's going on. We appreciate that. I have two basic questions. What is the anticipated bond length? How many years are you anticipating this $45 million bond? And also, second question is, at what interest rate are you anticipating? Now, I understand that until you go into the market, you don't know the actual number,
Right.
but those are my two questions.
We'll let Mr. Kelly answer it.
Yes.
The anticipated length of the bond is 25 years at this point. We'll be fine-tuning that number as we move through the detailed design process. And currently, we're using a rate of 3.1%.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that might be-
Any other comment from the public? Seeing none, at 8:30, we will close the floor to public comment. And we're going to now move into our regular agenda of items. If you're welcome to stay and listen, we'll be moving personnel issues, finance issues, that sort of thing. If you do not intend to stay, I'm going to take a brief pause here of about 2 minutes and then allow people to exit so we can continue with our business. But thank you for coming this evening. September 24th, remind as many people as you can of the importance of a vote. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we will move on then to our first area of business, which is personnel. And this is new business where actions will be taken. Mrs. Ahmed, do you want to prep us on what we will be considering this evening?
Tonight, I'm asking the board their approval to, after they hear me, move items 1 through 18. 1 being Christine Baccarata, resignation of a lunch monitor at Washington School. Number 2, Christina Nicola, to adjust the resignation effective date. Number 3, Olivia Griggs, to adjust her effective start date. 4, Alexandra Juranich, to approve as a long-term substitute teacher at Washington School. 5, Polina Akural, to approve her as a part-time teacher assistant at the Kindergarten Center. 6, Zahara Karimi, to approve as a lunch monitor at Washington School. 7, Dolores Taribi, to approve as a lunch monitor at the Kindergarten Center. Sarah McGurran, to approve an increase in her salary. 9, Tony Ann Paterno, to rescind the approval of a 6.25 hours per day and approve 5.9 hours per day teacher assistant at Washington School. Regina Buell, number 10, to increase hours from 4 to 5 hours per day. 11, salary level changes as listed. Number 12, Megan Collins, to approve her disability leave following the birth of her baby, to be followed by a leave of absence under the Family Leave Act. Number 13, substitute teachers, to approve the following substitute teachers for the school year. Robin Coben, effective 9/17/2019. Patrick Ryan, effective 9/11/2019. 14, Title I instructors, to approve teachers for supplementary after-school Title I programs. Washington School, Alexandra Juranich, Megan Newmuller. Lincoln School, Diane Thompson, Vanessa DeLuco, Berna Demibrolaki, and Jennifer Kessler. 15, elementary co-curricular. For the following elementary co-curricular assignments and stipends, Daniel Angelson and Elizabeth Rizzi. 16, Christine Cavesi, student teacher at Pierpont School, to approve 50 hours during the 2019 school year. And then 17, to approve the following travel reimbursements for the 2019-2020 school year. And there's a few of those as listed. And where was 18? I have here. For accept the retirement of Mary Ann Ovalstein, confidential assistant to the business administrator in the business office with regret, effective December 31st, 2019, and it's a sad time.
Thank you. Any points of discussion on any of these?
I'll just comment that we, congratulate Ms. Olson on her retirement, and we wish her well. It'll be effective at the end of the year. And just a reminder to the board that anytime you see a Title I instructor, that those funds for salaries come from Title I grant money and not from the board budget.
No board member with questions regarding these motions? So would you follow?
Upon recommendation of the superintendent to move the following resignations, retirements, salary adjustments, reassignments, appointments, etc., in accordance with law, with the board's approval vote.
Okay, personnel items 1 through 18. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Healy. Last opportunity for any comments or questions regarding these. Seeing none, I would ask the secretary to pull the board, please.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati? Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Librera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, and I was reminded to use the mic for those viewing at home. So thank you. Moving then into curriculum and instruction, Mrs. Jones, would you tell us what's on the agenda this evening?
Thank you. There are 8 resolutions under CNI for board members' consideration tonight. Resolution number 1, Nursing Services Plan. Resolution number 2, Title 2A, Professional Development Service Proposal. This is for development services for math and focus during the 2019-2020 school year for the staff at the Kindergarten Center, Lincoln, and Washington, not to succeed a cost of $5,600. Resolution 3, out-of-district placements, totaling $373,654. Resolution 4, field trips, there are 18 thus far. Resolution 5, service provider, Maybell Pen and Associates for the 2019 and 20 school year. Resolution 6, service provider CVH Care and Hackensack. Resolution number 7, authorizing the superintendent to request a waiver from the Bergen County Office of the New Jersey Department of Education for the Kindergarten Center at Sylvan School, allowing more than 25 students per class, and to hire teacher assistants for each class with more than 25 students. And resolution number 8 is the home instruction for 4 students. And maybe Mr. Hurley would like to speak on the nursing service plan.
I wasn't sure or heard you correctly, but yes, the nursing service plan is an annual plan that needs to be approved by the board. It simply is and I have a document with me, but it's simply a template that the state sends to us in which we attest to the fact that we're following the maintenance of health records under the code, and we fill in the number of students that we provide various required screenings for in every building. And we do that annually. And I also want to mention that we did get the waiver. I spoke earlier about a waiver in the kindergarten center. That was for the bathrooms. This year, because of our enrollment being over 200 and having 8 classrooms, if you have more than 25 students in a kindergarten class, you need to then hire a teacher assistant. Not the people we hired to walk the student for the bathroom, but the teacher assistant in those rooms. And we received the waiver so that we could start school, but there is a board resolution approving the request. I know it's coming after the horse is out of the barn, but we had an open school that I have to submit to the county office, and that's why that's on there. Okay?
Mr. President,
Yes.
it's been called to my attention that I've made an error. Resolution number 5 is to rescind the approval of the following service of May Balvin Associates. And resolution number 6 is to approve the following service for CVH Care.
Thank you for that correction. As they have not been formally moved yet, it's okay, and we can just continue on then. Any further comments before they're formally moved? Questions? None? Mrs. Jones, would you care to formally move those resolutions?
I move the following, put forward the following motions under the recommendation of the superintendent.
Okay, and then is there a second by Dr. Alati? Any additional comments regarding curriculum instructions, items 1 through 8? Seeing none, I'd ask the secretary to please poll the board. You may.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes. Little duo here. Okay. Moving on then to finance. Dr. Racine, please explain to us what we have this evening.
All right, we have 8 motions this evening. The first one is the approval of bills. Number 2 is the approval of these July Secretary Treasurer's report. 3 and 4 are budget transfers for July and August. 5, accepting a donation from Play United Grant for the high school of $5,000. 6 and 7 are school improvement or SIA funds. And 8 is a maximum fee for CST evaluations. I'd like to ask for information about 6, 7, and 8.
I can handle that. As you recall, we were given through the Title I money, a school improvement award in high school to address academic areas involving special ed students, but also general students to keep working to improve scores. That grant money is going to be used, as explained in the 2 motions, to get interactive online programs to work in terms of core coursework, and also with special emphasis on math. Okay. And that's a grant money that we received. Also, while I mentioned in communication to the board, by policy we set evaluation fees for any parent who requests a private evaluation for their student under IDEA through Child Study Team, and the policy allows us to allow a parent to get a private evaluation, but at the same time to put a cap on what the board would pay for that evaluation. And that's why that's there. And it's funny, under finance, most of the items seem to be curriculum-based tonight. So Mr. Kelly, I know, likes to talk about stealing your thunder here with finance. And I'm pleased that the donation from Special Olympics to fund our unified club and our unified program for our special ed students at the high school was renewed and was increased from $4,000 to $5,000. And if you recall, last year, Mr. DeBarry made a presentation to the board about that program, a highly successful program.
It's great to see the funding on that increasing. That's great. Any board member with any questions or comments before these are formally moved? No? Dr. Racine, would you please?
The 8 finance motions.
And seconded by Mr. Mazzone. Last chance for any comments. Seeing none, ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving then into policy, Mr. Healy.
We did not have any policy committee meetings since our last board meeting, and there are no motions this evening.
Thank you. No committee report, no motions this evening. Then we move on to buildings and grounds. Well, I should ask, any member of the board have any questions for policy?
I have just a statement that we received some updates for mostly mandated policies from Strauss Esme about a week or so ago, and the policy committee, as I noted, will meet on September 30th, right, at 6:45 to review those changes, and then the plan would be to move them on to 2 meetings in October to go forward with them.
Very good, thank you. And then on to Building and Grounds, Mr. Mazzone.
Yes, since our last meeting, we've not had a committee meeting, and there are no agenda items this evening for Buildings and Grounds.
If I can make a comment about Buildings and Grounds, we had a meeting today with Advocate, who's our consultant for our custodial services, and with Aramark representatives, and Mr. Kelly and I meet quarterly, I guess, with them, and we sent you all a copy of their report. It is by far the best report we've ever had in terms of nearly 100%, I guess it was 100% because there was one correction, in all of their targets, and the highest ratings in all of our buildings that we've ever had. So we're very pleased with the conditions of the building, the custodial services, both of our own staff and of Aramark. So that was a good report and a good meeting to have today.
Very good, thank you. Any board member with comments regarding Building and Grounds? No, we'll move on then. We'll move then into old business, which really means any business, any board member with a topic they would like to bring up at this point? No? Okay.
Can I make one
yes,
comment?
please.
Yeah, I'm talking about that.
That's good. Take it.
Yeah. In addition to the policy committee, for the strategic planning and communications committee on the 30th, I think we should wait and see the results of the 24th election. As I used to say during timeouts in basketball when I was coaching, when the referendum passes, I used to say when you make the foul shot, but if the referendum, when it passes, the next day the architect and the project management firm will begin to work on the more detailed plans that need to go out to get ready to go out to bid, and that's a several-month project. They'll also take a look at a projection of a time frame for the project and start to crystallize that a little bit. So should the referendum pass, it probably makes more sense to meet a couple of weeks later so that we could have some idea of potential time frame and what the administration's role will be and what the board's role will be, going forward. Should the referendum not pass, we may meet that night or we may meet shortly thereafter to talk about the impact of that. So, keep that as a tentative date, but I'm thinking in either case it may make more sense to meet a little bit later than that.
So mid-October, maybe?
Maybe mid-October.
And would we then also move the policy meeting to that?
No, the
same-
policy we're going to meet because I
Okay.
want to get those policies, we got it early September and I don't want to drag into
Understood.
December with that.
Okay, very good. Is there any legislative update, Mr. Rowland?
I have the CDC's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, as well as state and local health departments have made a recommendation that people consider not using e-cigarettes because of the potential pulmonary diseases. So these aren't to be used by youth anyway, but we can't control everything they do outside of school. So it'd be nice if we could educate them about the dangers of this because it's an emerging situation. That was my legislative update for today.
Thank you. I think that's probably a good point. Are we doing anything? This has been so prevalent in the news, the issues with vaping and such. Are we doing anything proactively in the schools?
Yes, when we have been. We've held assemblies with Detective Anderson, with administrators last year, the year before, again this year. We have, through a donation from a resident in town, we are going to get some very nice posters to put around the high school, reminding folks about the damage of vaping. I'm also very pleased to let you know but I was going to give you more detail in our October meeting, since tonight was more of a focus on the referendum, that the Parent Academy that we were talking about as a goal, I've met with the committee of administrators and some parents, and we have 5 or 6 scheduled evening and day meetings for parents, and one of them is going to be bringing people in on a vaping program for the parents. So we're certainly on it, and we've been on it, and we're going to amp it up a bit this year with signs around the building and the Parent Academy. And in October, in my report, I'll give you all, and I'll send it in the communication, what is scheduled so far for those parent meetings.
Thank you. Any comment from board members regarding the legislative update or any of the discussion? Yes, Mrs. LeBear.
I just wanted to take the opportunity, since this is the last time we'll be meeting before the referendum vote, to thank Mr. Hurley, the school administration, the entire community for, again, engaging in a thoughtful, constructive, respectful discussion around the needs of the district. I know there were a lot of folks from the community that worked very hard to evaluate feedback, to solicit feedback since the last election, and to put together a proposal that is balanced and is very focused in strategic areas to move the district forward. So just like to thank everybody for their participation and to express my support for the referendum next week.
Thank you. Any other comments? Having none, we will now open the floor again to members of the public for public comment. It is 8:51 p.m. Does not seem there's any comment forthcoming, so we'll close the floor at 8:51 p.m. And is there any need for executive?
Nope.
So there's no need this evening for executive session. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Mr. Mazzone nodded his head, and Mrs. LeBear said second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.